Welcome back to Cozy Side Audio. Tonight's story is soft, slow, and written from the heart. Perfect for those quiet hours. If it touches you, please like, share it with someone special, and subscribe for more gentle moments. Let's begin the story.
Cozy Side Audio presents The Garage Comic. Chapter 1: The Wrench and the Minivan. The garage was never supposed to be a stage. It smelled like oil stains, old cut grass, and whatever mysterious fumes seeped out of the lawnmower when you pulled its cord too many times. It was stacked with forgotten cardboard boxes, bicycles with deflated tires, and a minivan that rattled like it had a personal vendetta against smooth rides. The spiders owned the corners. The paint cans sat like bored audience members waiting for the show to start. And 10-year-old Hannah Walsh stood in the middle of it all with her masterpiece, a wrench duct-taped to a broomstick. Her microphone. She held it with the same reverence other kids reserved for dolls or baseball bats. She'd spent a whole Saturday afternoon convincing her dad that she definitely needed duct tape for a science project. He hadn't even questioned it. He just handed over the roll and went back to fixing the water heater. He should have known better. Science project? Please. 10-year-old Hannah's brain was already 70% schemes and 30% punchlines. "Good evening, everybody," she declared, thrusting her wrench mic into the air. Her voice echoed against the concrete walls. "How's everyone doing tonight?" Her audience, as always, was silent. 6 paint cans arranged in a neat row, a rake leaning casually against the wall like it was too cool to care, and the family minivan, 1997, beige, with peeling bumper stickers and a driver's side door that squeaked like a haunted house. "Oh, tough crowd," Hannah said, pacing across the garage floor. "Look, I know you guys are paint cans, but you could at least pretend to clap. Really lowers my self-esteem." She tapped the wrench against one of the cans, making a hollow metallic clang. "See? That's better. That's applause. Don't overdo it." This was how she spent her evenings, while other kids played tag in the yard or watched cartoons. Hannah held court in the garage. She'd started when she was 8, armed with nothing but her big mouth and a desperate need to make someone laugh. 2 years later, the garage was her empire, and the minivan was her favorite target. "This car," she said, turning dramatically to face it, "has 3 working gears: neutral, broken, and screaming." The minivan sat there in silence, its headlights dull, as if even it was too tired to argue. "Seriously," Hannah went on, "every time we take it on the highway, it sounds like it's trying to audition for a horror movie. I swear I heard it whisper 'help me' last week." She leaned toward the hood, cupping her ear like she was listening. "What's that? Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were in therapy. My bad." She laughed at her own joke, and honestly, she had every right to. Hannah wasn't the kind of kid who needed an audience to validate her. Sure, she wanted laughs. She lived for laughs. But even if nobody else was around, she'd still perform. She cracked herself up constantly, and that was enough fuel to keep going. Her family didn't mind either. At first, her parents thought the garage shows were a phase, like when she wanted to be a magician and kept pulling half-eaten Pop-Tarts out of people's coat sleeves, or when she wanted to be an astronaut, until she realized outer space didn't have Wi-Fi, but the garage shows stuck. Her mom would open the back door sometimes and peek in, catching Hannah mid-rant about math homework being a scam. Instead of telling her to go do something productive, she'd smile and let her keep going. Her dad once tried to suggest she play outside more, but then Hannah roasted him so hard about dad's sneakers that look like orthopedic marshmallows that he retreated and never brought it up again. And then there was her little brother, Evan, who was 7 and easily bribed. He'd sit on a milk crate in the garage, pretending to be the heckler, yelling things like, "You're not funny," or "Tell better jokes." And Hannah would fire back instantly. "Oh, I'm sorry, did you say something? I couldn't hear you over the sound of your entire existence being irrelevant." Cue Evan storming out dramatically while Hannah bowed to her imaginary crowd. It was perfect. The thing about 10-year-old Hannah was this. She wasn't shy. Most kids that age struggled with stage fright. They clammed up during show and tell, tripped over their words at spelling bees, and avoided eye contact with teachers like eye contact was contagious. Not Hannah. She was the kid who volunteered to read her essay out loud even if she hadn't written one. She thrived on attention. But more than that, she thrived on making people laugh. And if she couldn't get people, she'd take paint cans. That was the beauty of the garage. Nobody judged her here. Nobody told her to be quiet or stop making everything a joke. It was her sanctuary, her workshop, her first real stage. Every night she added to her routine jokes about school lunches. If I wanted a rectangle of cardboard with tomato paste, I'd eat the cafeteria pizza and a paper plate together. About her mom's obsession with labeling everything in the fridge. "Nobody's trying to steal your leftover peas, Mom." About her dad's endless DIY projects. "He's been building a birdhouse since before I was born. At this point, it's more of a bird mansion with a mortgage." She was learning timing without realizing it, learning rhythm, learning how to stretch a pause, raise an eyebrow, and make her punchlines land. Comedy was becoming her language. And sometimes, when she was really lucky, she even got an audience that clapped. It happened one Friday night when her cousins came over for dinner. After dessert, Hannah dragged them all into the garage. "Sit," she commanded, pointing to the paint cans. "Welcome to the show." The cousins obeyed, partly because they were younger and partly because Hannah had the kind of bossy energy that made you want to obey. She launched into her minivan bit, and this time, laughter. Real laughter. Her cousins laughed so hard one of them hiccuped. Her uncle poked his head in and chuckled. Her aunt followed, then her parents. Before long, half the family was crammed into the garage, sitting on toolboxes and camping chairs, listening to Hannah deliver a set about the horrors of math class and the questionable smell of gym uniforms. It wasn't a Netflix special. It wasn't Madison Square Garden. But it was the first time Hannah realized, oh, this thing I love? Other people love it too. The applause at the end was uneven and messy, but to Hannah it sounded like thunder. Later that night, while brushing her teeth, she caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Toothpaste foam foamed at her mouth like a rabid squirrel, but she grinned anyway. She was good at this. She knew she was. Other kids dreamed about being pop stars, astronauts, superheroes. Hannah knew her path already. She didn't need glitter costumes or rocket ships. She just needed a mic, even if it was a duct-taped wrench, and an audience. The paint cans would do for now. But one day, she promised herself, it would be more. Much more. And when that day came, she already had her opener. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the garage. Chapter 2. Paint Cans and Spiders. The garage audience grew. Not all at once. There was no magical night where Hannah's show went viral across the neighborhood. But little by little, people found their way to the cracked concrete floor, lured in by the same strange gravity that made you stop and watch a street performer juggling knives. Except instead of knives, Hannah juggled punchlines about her dad's obsession with Costco samples and her teacher's inability to work the projector. At first, it was just cousins, then her best friend Mia from down the block, then Mia's older sister, who only came because she thought maybe there would be snacks. There were pretzels, courtesy of Hannah's mom, who believed every performance deserved concessions. And then the neighbors. Mr. Lopez from next door showed up one Saturday, plopping down on a lawn chair he dragged over. He claimed he was only there because his wife was binging soap operas too loudly, but by the end, he was laughing so hard his belly shook like jello in an earthquake. Mrs. Kim from across the street popped in a week later, carrying a tray of dumplings for intermission. Even the mailman once wandered by, muttering something about just checking the address, while clearly enjoying himself. The garage shows were becoming a thing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hannah announced one evening, standing tall with her duct-taped wrench mic. "Tonight's show is a very special one. We've got a sold-out crowd," which is impressive, because technically, no one bought tickets. Or seats. Or, okay, fine, someone sitting on a cooler of Capri Suns, but you get the idea. The audience, about 12 people wedged between bikes and shelves of dusty paint cans, laughed. "I've been workshopping some new material," Hannah continued, "starting with my mom. Give it up for my mom, everyone." The crowd clapped, and her mom blushed, waving like she'd just won Miss America. "Okay, so my mom has this thing where she labels leftovers. You open the fridge, and it's like reading a suspense novel. Meatloaf Wednesday, rice Thursday, broccoli if you dare. Like, Mom, who are we protecting these peas from? Pirates? Neighbor kids breaking in to steal cold asparagus? If anyone's stealing asparagus, they deserve it." More laughter. Her mom shook her head, grinning as if to say, "You're impossible." The magic wasn't just the jokes, though. It was Hannah's delivery. Her pauses, her expressions, the way she raised her eyebrows like she was letting you in on a secret. For a 10-year-old, her timing was unnervingly sharp. She knew when to stretch a silence until it snapped, when to cut herself off mid-sentence for a laugh, when to lean on a word just enough to make it absurd. And the confidence. She didn't shuffle or mumble. She owned the space. Even if the space was a garage filled with cobwebs and the faint smell of fertilizer, she treated it like a comedy club. The way she stood, the way she gripped her mic, it was showtime. Always. Of course, not everything went perfectly. There was the night Evan, her brother, decided to sabotage her set by turning off the garage light mid-joke. Suddenly, Hannah was left standing in total darkness, her punchline swallowed by black. For 2 seconds, silence. Then her voice rang out, "Wow, this must be what it feels like to perform in Los Angeles before you're famous." The audience howled, or the time Mrs. Kim's tray of dumplings fell over during Hannah's bit about gym class. Without missing a beat, Hannah pointed at the mess and said, "See, this is why I don't do slapstick. Props are dangerous." More laughter. Dumplings were eaten off napkins. The show went on. Her parents started to realize it wasn't just cute anymore. She wasn't just their funny daughter making jokes about cafeteria food. She was good. Like, good. One night after everyone left, her dad lingered in the garage, wiping down the folding chairs they'd borrowed from the neighbors. "You know," he said, not looking at her directly. Classic dad move. "You've got something, kiddo. Timing, confidence. It's not normal." "Gee, thanks, Dad," Hannah said, twirling the wrench mic like a drum major. "Nothing says encouragement like you're not normal." He chuckled. "You know what I mean. You've got spark." Hannah tried to play it cool, shrugging like it was no big deal. But inside, she felt like she'd just won a secret trophy no one else could see. Word of mouth spread. By summer, Hannah was doing shows every Friday night. They weren't advertised, obviously. She wasn't exactly running a comedy empire at 10. But somehow, people found out. Neighbors told neighbors. Relatives told coworkers. Soon, strangers she'd never met were showing up at the Walsh family garage, plopping themselves onto folding chairs or coolers, eager to watch a kid with a duct-taped wrench make fun of long division. It wasn't Broadway. It wasn't even the community theater. But it was a crowd. And for Hannah, it was everything. She also started experimenting. New formats, new styles. Sometimes she'd pretend she was a late-night host, interviewing Evan about why boys never did their homework. Sometimes she'd do impressions. Her best was their dog, Max, barking indignantly when someone suggested bath time. Other nights she'd bring out props, a spatula for dramatic effect, her dad's work gloves to mimic a construction worker. And the paint cans and spiders? They were still there, silent and loyal. She even started naming them. The tallest can of blue paint was Gerald. The squat white one was Janet. The spiders became balcony seats. She'd riff about them between jokes, like they were recurring characters in her sitcom. Gerald's not laughing tonight. Tough crowd. Janet's seen this bit before. She's not impressed. Balcony seats are full again, must be half off night. Her audiences ate it up. Yeah. The thing was, Hannah never doubted herself. Not once. Sure, sometimes she tripped over a word or blanked on a punchline. Sometimes the laughter didn't land as hard as she wanted. But she didn't spiral into embarrassment. She didn't think, oh no, I'm failing. She thought, okay, next one will hit. And it always did. That was her superpower. Where most kids and, honestly, most adults would shrink from silence, Hannah leaned into it. She made it part of the act. She was confident not because she thought she was perfect, but because she trusted she'd find her way through. And people could feel it. That trust, that spark. It was addictive. One night, after a particularly raucous show where Hannah roasted her uncle's bald spot so hard he threatened to charge her rent, she sat in her room, staring at the duct-taped wrench propped against her desk. She wondered what it would be like to hold a real microphone, to stand on a real stage, to make not just 12 people laugh, but 100 or 1,000. She closed her eyes, imagining it, the bright lights, the roar of applause, the energy rolling toward her like a tidal wave. She grinned. Someday. For now, she had paint cans and spiders. And honestly, that was enough. Chapter 3. The School Talent Show. It started with a flyer, bright yellow paper, taped crookedly to the bulletin board in the school hallway, fluttering like it was trying to get Hannah's attention. Talent show. Sign up by Friday. Most kids passed it by without even noticing. A few stopped to whisper with friends. Maybe they'd sing a song, do a dance routine, play the clarinet badly but with conviction. Hannah stopped, read it 3 times, and then grinned. Oh, it was on. She came home that afternoon practically vibrating with energy. The moment she burst through the front door, her mom looked up from chopping carrots and braced herself. I'm signing up for the talent show, Hannah announced. That's great, honey, her mom said, distracted, sliding the carrots into a pan. No, you don't get it, Hannah insisted, slamming her backpack onto the floor like she was declaring war. I'm ready, this is my moment. The garage was practice. Now it's time for the big leagues. Her mom arched an eyebrow. You know the big leagues is just the school auditorium, right? Every empire starts small, Hannah said, dramatically pointing her duct-taped wrench mic into the air. Her little brother Evan groaned from the couch. Oh no, she's gonna embarrass me in front of everyone. Relax, Hannah shot back. Nobody even knows you exist. I checked. Her mom tried not to laugh. The week leading up to the show, the garage turned into a war room. Hannah stood in front of her paint can audience every night, running through her set with military precision. She'd cut jokes that felt too inside garage and replaced them with broader ones. Paint cans and spiders were funny to neighbors, sure, but she needed material that would kill in front of teachers and third graders. So, she workshopped. School lunches, she said, pacing like a general. You ever notice how the pizza is both burned and soggy? It's like the cafeteria discovered a new element. Cardboardium. Evan snorted from his milk crate. That's actually funny. Thanks, Hannah said, scribbling notes furiously. Write that down. I'll use you as my barometer. What's a barometer? Someone who eats glue. Hey! Her mom leaned in from the kitchen doorway. Hannah, maybe don't roast your brother during the act? Hannah paused, then shook her head. No, he deserves it, and it's relatable content. She practiced everything: timing, pauses, even walking on and off stage. She made her dad sit in a folding chair and pretend to be the principal introducing her. She made Evan boo so she could test out heckler comebacks. She even practiced bowing, because if she was going to crush, she needed to crush with style. And every night the audience grew. Neighbors dropped by, friends came over. At one point, Mrs. Kim brought her knitting and said she was just here for rehearsal previews. By Thursday, the garage was packed wall to wall. Hannah delivered her set like a pro, and when she finished, the applause was so loud it rattled the minivan windows. If the garage was the minor leagues, she was ready for the call-up. The night of the talent show, Hannah stood backstage in the school auditorium clutching her wrench mic like a good luck charm. She wasn't going to use it. Obviously, the school had real microphones, but she needed it with her, tucked under her arm like a secret weapon. All around her, kids buzzed with nerves. One girl stretched her legs like she was preparing for the Olympics. A boy tuned his guitar furiously, strumming one note over and over until it sounded like a fire alarm. Two best friends whispered their dance routine counts under their breath. 1, 2, 3, spin, hair flip, smile. Hannah? She wasn't nervous. Not really. Okay, fine. Her stomach was flipping like a pancake on a broken griddle. But she told herself it was excitement, not fear. Because this was what she wanted. This was what she lived for. And besides, her whole family was out there. Mom, Dad, Evan, even her grandparents. They were all in the second row, ready to clap like maniacs at the first sound of her voice. The curtain rustled. The principal whispered her name. Showtime. She stepped onto the stage. The lights were bright, hotter than she expected. The microphone was taller than she was, and she had to tug it down awkwardly, which earned a little ripple of giggles from the audience. She leaned into it, raising her eyebrows like she meant to do that. Well, she said, taking a breath, this is the biggest garage I've ever played. Laughter. Real, loud, genuine laughter. It was like a wave crashing over her. And suddenly, the nerves were gone. She launched into her material. You ever notice how school lunch pizza is like a science experiment gone wrong? Like, it's burned and raw at the same time. The cafeteria ladies must have a button on the oven that just says, regret. The audience laughed, teachers laughed. Even the janitor in the back let out a chuckle. Gym class is the best. They make us run laps for our health. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson is standing there holding a whistle, eating a donut. Sir, maybe you should run a lap? At least make it look like you're trying. The crowd laughed harder. Hannah's smile stretched wider. She hit her stride, weaving in jokes about homework, group projects, her brother Evan being the control group in every experiment. If you want to know how long it takes for someone to get glue stuck in their hair, just hand Evan a bottle and set a timer. Evan groaned in the audience, but everyone else roared. By the time she finished, the laughter had turned into cheers, real, thunderous clapping that filled the whole auditorium. Hannah bowed, basking in it. She didn't win first place. That went to the girl who sang a heartfelt ballad about rainbows and probably had a professional vocal coach. But she didn't care. Because afterward, people came up to her. Teachers, parents, even other kids she barely knew. They all said the same thing. You were hilarious. You've got a gift. When's your next show? And for Hannah, that was better than any ribbon or trophy. That night, back in her room, she set the wrench mic carefully on her desk. She didn't need to imagine anymore what it would feel like to make a real audience laugh. She knew. And she wanted more. The garage was where it started. The school talent show proved it could spread. The world was bigger than paint cans and spiders. And Hannah Walsh was ready for it. Chapter 4. Paint Cans and People. Hannah stood in the garage doorway with her arms crossed, surveying her kingdom. The same old flickering light bulb buzzed faintly overhead, the smell of sawdust and motor oil still clinging to everything. But tonight, the garage looked upgraded. Her dad had finally cleared away the boxes of holiday decorations, the giant inflatable snowman missing one eye, the Halloween skeleton that no one ever put away properly, and shoved them against the back wall. The folding chairs from the basement, 4 of them, were now lined up neatly in a row, front and center. On the makeshift stage, her mic stand, still the wrench duct-taped to a stick, had been wrapped with twinkle lights, a suggestion from her mom. "I want the audience to feel the ambiance," her mom had explained, waving her hands like she was staging Broadway. "Even if the audience is just me and the dog." The dog Baxter had been promoted to front row critic. His ears twitched whenever Hannah raised her voice, which she decided to interpret as laughter. But tonight, the chairs weren't empty. They were filled with people. Actual people. Not 1,000, not 100, not even 20. But 6. Her best friends from school and the neighborhood. Cameron, her lifelong partner in sarcasm, leaned so far back in his folding chair she thought it might snap. Next to him was Ava, who'd shown up with a thermos of tea like it was a midnight poetry slam. Beside her, twin brothers Sam and Matt bickered over who got to hold the dog during the show. Their younger cousin Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, notebook in hand like she was here to review Hannah's performance for the local paper. And then, of course, there was her mom, seated right in the middle with the proud, unblinking intensity of a coach watching their kid play varsity. Hannah inhaled. This wasn't a big crowd, but it was the first real one that wasn't just spiders, dust, and an audience of paint cans. She raised the wrench mic. "Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Garage Comedy Club, where the cover charge is free, but you still regret coming." Laughter burst out instantly. Ava snorted into her tea. Cameron slapped his knee like he'd just witnessed slapstick. Even Baxter barked once, perfectly timed. It was the kind of laughter that wasn't just polite, wasn't just supportive, it was genuine. And that felt electric. She launched into her set. "You know what's weird about growing up with a dad who hoards car parts? You learn early that a don't touch that means definitely touch it. Because it's probably sharp, dangerous, or flammable." The twins cackled. They'd once accidentally set off a box of fireworks in the driveway. And then there's the garage itself. People always ask me, "Why a garage? Why not your room?" And I'm like, "Well, because my room doesn't come with built-in hecklers." She gestured toward the corner where a particularly fat spider dangled. "That guy's been with me since the beginning. He's judgmental, he's consistent, and I'm 90% sure he's gonna sue me for not paying him royalties." The room erupted again. It wasn't that Hannah thought of herself as destined for greatness or anything, but in this moment, with this laughter, she felt like she wasn't just pretending. She was doing it, really doing it. After the show, the group stayed in the garage, still buzzing. Sam balanced on the back legs of his chair while Matt argued about which joke had been the best. No, the spider line killed," Matt said. "Spider line was good," Sam agreed, "but the car parts won? That's relatable comedy right there. My dad's garage is literally just a graveyard of lawnmower wheels." Ava took another sip of tea, smirking. "My favorite part was that you didn't bomb. At all. Which is rare for, people who actually start doing this in real clubs." Hannah blinked at her. "Wait, you've been to clubs? Like comedy clubs?" Ava shrugged. "Once, I was dragged to one in the city. The guy was so nervous he laughed at his own jokes before the audience could. Half the crowd left before he even finished." Hannah tilted her head, filing that away. She didn't want to be that comedian. Her mom was already fussing over the stage lights. Next time, I'm putting a table out with snacks. People will stay longer if there's food. Cameron perked up. Like popcorn? Or like the full nacho experience? Don't push it, her mom said. But Hannah was grinning, because for the first time, she wasn't just playing pretend. She had an audience. A small one, sure, but enough to feel real. That night, lying in bed, she thought about the phrase people always used, cutting your teeth on the small stage. She didn't know if a garage with 6 folding chairs counted as a small stage or a big imagination, but it didn't matter. Because every laugh she earned tonight had felt louder than the creak of the empty garage, louder than the silence of playing to nobody. And louder still was the voice in her head that whispered, "This could be something. Keep going." The garage shows became a tradition. Every Friday night, a new lineup appeared, friends, cousins, neighbors, and whoever had time. Cameron once brought a date who laughed harder at Hannah's jokes than at anything Cameron said, which he never forgave her for. Her dad even poked his head in occasionally, pretending not to enjoy himself but staying long enough to hear at least 3 jokes. Still better than late-night TV, he admitted once, which, coming from him, was practically a standing ovation. By week 3, Hannah had posters taped to the walls with the words, "Garage Comedy Club, where the laughter's real, but the floorboards aren't stable." She experimented, tried longer stories, played with timing, learned what landed and what didn't. Every set, she recorded on her phone, rewatching later to study herself. Not because she doubted she was funny, but because she wanted to sharpen it, polish it, treat it like an art. Comedy, she realized, wasn't about luck or winging it. It was like building a car, messy, noisy, trial and error, until it ran smooth. And Hannah was all in. 2 months later, she had a surprise. Her first outsider audience. It was Ava's cousin from college, visiting for the weekend. Word spread about the garage shows, and suddenly this guy, who had actually been to multiple city clubs, was sitting in her folding chair, arms crossed, skeptical. "Go ahead," he said. "Make me laugh." Her stomach tightened. This wasn't just friends anymore. This was someone she didn't know, who didn't have to support her. She looked at the crowd, then back at the wrench mic, then took a breath. You know what's awkward? When your audience includes one person who looks like they've already written your bad Yelp review. The garage exploded with laughter. Even Ava's cousin cracked a smile. Hannah grinned. Oh yeah, she had him. That night, as she wound up cords and packed away chairs, she felt something shift. This wasn't just play anymore. This was practice. This was preparation. Her garage might not be famous, but in her bones, she knew. One day, she'd stand in front of more than 6 chairs. One day, she'd face a crowd she couldn't see the end of. And when that day came, she'd be ready. Chapter 5. Word on the Street. The Garage Comedy Club had become such a fixture in Hannah's neighborhood that people started treating it like a weekly event. Friday nights meant laughter. Friday nights meant someone carrying and folding chairs, someone else balancing a plate of cookies, and at least one latecomer tripping over the extension cord that powered the twinkle lights. At first, it was just family and close friends, but by the 6th week, her mom whispered, "There are cars parking down the block." Sure enough, Hannah peeked out the side door and saw 2 sedans she didn't recognize, doors slamming shut as strangers walked up the driveway, chatting casually like they'd bought tickets online. Her pulse jumped. Strangers. Real audience members. "Hi," she greeted them, trying not to sound nervous. "Welcome to, the Garage Comedy Club?" One of them, a woman with a denim jacket covered in pins, grinned. "Ava told me this was better than Netflix." Hannah tried not to choke on the sudden weight of expectation. Better than Netflix? That was a lot. That night, the garage was packed. 20 people crammed into the space, spilling into the driveway, leaning against the hood of the family minivan just to hear her set. Someone had brought a Bluetooth speaker so her mic could actually amplify, even though it buzzed faintly with static whenever Baxter barked. She looked at the crowd, the twinkle lights reflecting off all those eyes, and thought, "This is insane." She raised the wrench mic with a flourish. "Welcome, everybody, to the only comedy club where the bar is, my dad's mini fridge. Drinks are free if you can figure out how to unstick the door." The laugh hit like a wave. Not a ripple, not a polite chuckle. An actual wave. And she surfed it. Afterward, the strangers introduced themselves. One worked at a cafe downtown. Another was a high school teacher who claimed she'd repeat Hannah's jokes to her students. Hannah begged her not to. "You're good," the cafe worker said, adjusting her scarf. "Like, you should come do a set at our open mic sometime. It's not huge, but it's an actual stage." The word sank in. Not huge. Actual stage. She smiled, trying not to look like her brain was running victory laps. "Yeah, I'd love that." That week, she obsessed. Not in a nervous, spiraling way. Hannah wasn't someone who doubted she belonged up there. But in a scientist in a lab way, she pulled up every recording she'd ever made in the garage, headphones in, notebook open, scribbling notes like a detective solving a case. Pause here. Don't step on your own laugh. Bigger gesture at this part. Rework the car joke, too local, needs universal. Cameron caught her one afternoon at the library surrounded by notebooks, pen tucked behind her ear. "Are you studying?" he asked. "Yup," Hannah said without looking up. "Like, comedy studying, is that a thing?" "It is now." He whistled. "Wow, most people just wing it and hope the crowd isn't mean. That's the problem. Winging it is like showing up to a basketball game without laces in your shoes. You'll trip before you even touch the ball." Cameron stared at her, then muttered, "You're terrifying when you make sense." Friday came again, and the garage was fuller than ever. Word had traveled so far that even her dad's coworker, a guy named Frank, who usually spent weekends fishing, showed up with a lawn chair and a six-pack. She killed that night. Every punchline landed, every pause felt electric, and when she finally set the mic down, she saw Ava whispering to the denim jacket woman, the cafe worker. Later, Ava grinned at Hannah like she'd just handed her front row tickets to her own future. "They booked you," Ava said. "What?" "The cafe, next Thursday. Open mic slot. You're on." For a moment, Hannah just stood there, wrench mic still in hand, twinkle lights humming overhead. Then she laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was real. The cafe was called the Poorhouse, the kind of place where students hunched over laptops pretending to work while secretly eavesdropping, where poets read dramatic haikus into a mic every Tuesday, and where the chalkboard menu had at least 3 drinks nobody could pronounce. When Hannah walked in with her mom, she froze. The stage was tiny, just a rug with a microphone stand and a single spotlight, but compared to the garage, it felt enormous. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears. Not fear, exactly. More like adrenaline. Her mom squeezed her shoulder. "It's the same as the garage, just more people." Hannah nodded, though she thought, "Yeah, but fewer spiders. That's gonna throw me off." Her turn came quicker than she expected. One minute, a guy with a guitar was crooning about lost love. The next, the host was calling her name. She stepped up, mic in hand, spotlight in her face. The crowd was small, maybe 30 people scattered at tables, but bigger than any she'd faced before. She took a breath. Then, instinctively, she said, "Well, this is the biggest garage I've ever played." The laugh was instant, loud, rolling. Her shoulders loosened. And she was off. She talked about garages, about spiders, about her dad's obsession with saving mystery screws in a coffee can. She wove in new material too, stories about her dog's terrible timing, about how every family minivan sounds like it's auditioning for a horror movie. Every punchline landed, every beat worked. By the end, she felt like she wasn't just playing dress-up anymore. She was standing in her future. After the show, the cafe manager pulled her aside. "You've got something," she said. "Keep coming back." Hannah floated out of the cafe like she had helium in her veins. Her mom walked beside her, beaming. "See, told you. Same as the garage. Just fewer spiders." Hannah laughed. "I'm bringing the spiders next time. They're part of the act." Back home, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling again, wide awake. But this time, it wasn't just the ceiling fan she saw. It was the spotlight. It was the faces in the crowd. It was the laugh that had rolled through the room and carried her with it. And she knew, without a shred of doubt, this was only the beginning. Chapter 6. Science of Timing. The Poorhouse Cafe smelled like burnt espresso and ambition. On Thursdays, it smelled like her. By the third week of showing up for the open mic, Hannah had her own unofficial table. It wasn't reserved exactly. More like everyone knew that's Hannah's spot. A corner table near the stage, with a power outlet that half worked and a wobbly chair that made her feel like she was balancing on an amusement park ride. It was hers, and she liked it. Every week, she treated her set like an experiment. She wasn't winging it anymore, not that she ever had. She was running trials. If comedy was an art, she was also convinced it was secretly math. Variable A. How long to pause after a punchline before moving on. Variable B. The exact number of syllables that made a word funny. Variable C. If she threw in a physical gesture, like pretending to mime the minivan's brake squealing, did people laugh harder? Her notebooks were filling up with what looked suspiciously like equations. 2-second pause laugh, 3-second pause groan. Microwave not funny, toaster funny. Why? Must test again. Dad joke about duct tape, keep. Dad joke about WD-40, retire. One Thursday, after she finished a tight 10 about the horrors of online shopping, I bought a sweater that promised to be oversized. Oversized for who? A hamster? She sat back down with Ava, who'd come along to watch. That was killer, Ava said, sipping her latte. Hannah said, flipping through her notes. The hamster line got a bigger laugh than I expected. I should have stretched it. Like, go into a whole riff about a hamster in a sweater vest, maybe. See, I didn't leave space for it. Gotta rework the pacing. Ava stared at her. You're insane. In a good way. But insane. Insanely precise, Hannah corrected. There's a science to it. Timing is everything. You can't just talk and hope. Ava leaned back. Most people just, tell jokes. Most people also overcook pasta. Doesn't mean I should. She wasn't bragging, she was just confident. She knew she was good. Not in a cocky way, but in a, this is my thing way. And the thing was, people were starting to notice. The poorhouse wasn't big, but the crowds were growing. Not because she was some viral sensation yet, but because people liked her and came back. The first week she'd done her set, 30 people. Now, 45. The week after, closer to 60. The cafe manager joked about getting a fire marshal involved. And every week, Hannah walked off stage buzzing because the laughs weren't an accident. They were earned, measured, tested. At home, her family was fully invested. Her dad printed fake tickets that said The Garage Comic, Admit One. He handed them out before every Friday garage show like they were golden passes. Her mom baked themed snacks. Punchline popcorn with caramel drizzle, one-liner brownies that vanished before the second act. Even her brother, who normally avoided family events like they were contagious, showed up once and heckled her about her dating life. She destroyed him. Absolutely roasted him in front of the entire garage. The crowd roared. Her brother blushed so hard he looked like a stop sign, and afterward he muttered, "Okay, yeah, you're funny." Which, from him, was basically a standing ovation. But the real test came 2 weeks later. A guy in the back row of the cafe, who'd been scribbling in a notebook the entire time, came up to her after her set. He was wiry, with a beard that looked like it had its own personality, and he introduced himself with a too-casual shrug. "Hey, I'm Mark. I do stand-up too. Just wanted to say you've got great timing. Like, really sharp." Hannah blinked. Another comic. A real one. "Oh, thanks," she said, trying to sound like this was normal. "Yeah, I've been working on that." Mark smirked. "You can tell. You don't step on your own laughs. Most new comics rush because they're scared of silence. You let the silence breathe. That's pro stuff." She floated the whole way home. That night, she sat in bed, headphones in, listening to her latest recording. She counted the beats out loud. 1, 2, laugh. 1, 2, 3, laugh. She rewound, paused, replayed. She laughed at herself not because the joke was new, but because she finally understood why it worked. She scribbled notes in the dark, pen scratching against paper. Timing isn't silence. Timing is a promise. They trust you to deliver. And she realized that's what she was building, trust. The next garage show, she tested her new theory. She opened with, "My dad's coffee can of mystery screws is like his retirement plan. No one knows what they're for, but he swears they'll be useful someday." She paused, just 1 second longer than usual. And the laugh was bigger. She leaned in, eyes wide, and whispered, "I think one of them might be holding the minivan together." The garage exploded. Baxter barked so loudly she thought the neighbors would call the cops. Her dad was doubled over in his lawn chair, nearly crying. And Hannah thought, got it. Nailed it. She started keeping a stopwatch app open during her sets. To the untrained eye, she was just checking her phone between jokes. But in reality, she was recording the length of every pause, every laugh. Cameron caught her one night afterward. "Are you seriously timing the laughter?" "Yes," she said unashamed. "Data matters." "Data," he repeated slowly. "Comedy is basically jazz plus algebra. You can't argue with numbers." Cameron groaned. "I liked you better when you were just funny. Now you're scary." The scary part was, it was working. By week 8 at the cafe, she was headlining the open mic nights. Not officially, but everyone knew Hannah went last, because she was the closer. The cafe manager admitted she rearranged the lineup just so Hannah could end the night on a high. People started asking for her schedule. Students, baristas, random strangers with tote bags. "When are you performing again? Do you post your stuff online? Do you have, like, a brand?" A brand. The word made Hannah laugh harder than any of her own jokes. "I'm literally performing in a garage," she told Ava. "What's my brand? Rust chic?" But Ava only smirked. "Don't joke, you're gonna need one." The first time someone recorded her without asking, she panicked. It was a guy in the third row at the cafe, phone angled toward her as she performed. Normally, she didn't care. People snapped pics all the time. But this was video. Actual footage. And part of her froze. Because if it went online, she couldn't control the timing. She couldn't edit it, polish it, tighten it. It would just be out there. Raw. That night, she ranted in the garage, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. What if it's not good? What if they post it and it's the one night I mess up? What if I blink weird and everyone calls me Blink Girl for the rest of my life? Her mom put down the tray of cookies she was carrying. "Sweetheart, you killed tonight. If someone shares it, they'll see what we all see." "But Her mom smiled gently. Trust yourself as much as we trust you. And just like that, Hannah exhaled. 2 days later, Ava burst into the library where Hannah was studying. Have you seen this? She asked, phone waving wildly. What? It's you. Hannah grabbed the phone. There she was, on stage at the poorhouse, mic in hand, telling the hamster sweater joke. The video was grainy, but the laughs were loud. And below it, 10,000 views. Hannah's stomach dropped. 10,000? Ava grinned. You're trending. That night, Hannah sat in her room, staring at the numbers climbing higher and higher. She laughed out loud, almost delirious. Not because she didn't believe it could happen, she always believed, but because it was happening now. Because all those nights timing her pauses, studying her sets, performing for spiders, they weren't just experiments anymore. They were proof. Proof that comedy wasn't luck. It was science. And she had the formula. Chapter 7. Viral in the Wild. It started with a phone. More specifically, it started with Cameron's phone, which he insisted was too old to survive another drop, but still managed to record video like a champ. One Thursday night at the poorhouse, while Hannah was in full swing riffing about how every GPS voice sounded passive-aggressive, Cameron sat at a back table, hit record, and captured the whole thing. The next morning, he uploaded a clip to his socials with the caption, "My friend Hannah, funniest person you don't know yet." This crowd almost spilled their oat milk lattes. Within 2 hours, the video had 3 shares. By lunchtime, it had 50. By dinner, it had crossed 5,000 views. And by Friday morning, Hannah's phone buzzed so relentlessly that her mom threatened to dunk it in the sink. "What is happening?" Hannah gasped, sitting cross-legged on her bed as Ava flopped beside her, scrolling through the avalanche of comments. "You're blowing up," Ava said, grinning like she'd planned this herself. "Who is this garage girl?" "Look, that's already a hashtag." Hannah blinked. "Garage girl?" "Yep. People love the whole garage thing. They're calling you the DIY queen of comedy. Someone even edited your bit over footage of a Home Depot ad." Hannah groaned and stuffed her face into a pillow. "I can't be associated with power drills." "Too late," Ava said. "You're trending." The clip spread. Someone posted it to TikTok with dramatic subtitles. "Welcome to the biggest garage I've ever played." That one hit 2 million views in 48 hours. Strangers started recognizing her at the poorhouse before she even stepped on stage. "You're the garage comic, right?" they'd ask, phones already out, recording. At first, it felt surreal, like living inside a daydream. But then, reality caught up. One night at the poorhouse, Hannah walked on stage, wrench make replica tucked into her bag, and the crowd actually cheered before she'd spoken a word. Her chest tightened, cheering, anticipation. Suddenly, the weight of expectation loomed like a second spotlight. She said, blinking into the lights. "You guys know I'm not licensed to build garages, right? Like, don't ask me for quotes." The laugh came, but it felt different, louder, hungrier. She powered through her set, landing joke after joke, but by the end, she was sweating harder than usual. She left the stage to applause that rang in her ears long after, but she couldn't shake the thought. They already knew me before I opened my mouth. Back in the garage, she vented to Baxter, who lay on his side, tail thumping lazily. "They want the garage girl, Bax," she muttered, tugging the duct tape tighter around her old wrench mic. "But what if I want to be more than that?" Baxter sighed and rolled onto his back like he was telling her to chill. The next Friday, she experimented. She wrote new bits, less about garages, more about people. About the absurdity of self-checkout machines, about how her dad treated grocery shopping like a tactical mission, about her mom's habit of just resting her eyes for 3-hour naps. The garage audience, her home crowd, laughed just as hard as ever. "You're not just garage girl," Frank said afterward, still nursing his beer. "You're funny. That's different." It stuck with her. Funny, not just a gimmick. But the internet was relentless. Her followers ballooned into the tens of thousands, then the hundreds of thousands. Comment sections filled with requests. "Say the garage line again. When's the garage tour starting? Garage Girl Merch Plus." Hannah stared at her phone one night, scrolling endlessly, and whispered, "Am I gonna get trapped in a shed I didn't build?" Her mom overheard and poked her head in. "Honey, if people love you for where you started, that's not a trap. That's a foundation. Build on it." Hannah thought about that all night. The tipping point came when the Poorhouse announced she'd be headlining her first official comedy night. Not just a slot, not just a 5-minute set, a full 45 minutes. Her name in neon chalk on the sandwich board out front. The line stretched around the block. Inside, phones were everywhere, little screens lighting up the dark like fireflies. The host introduced her as the one and only garage comic, and Hannah stepped onto the rug stage with her wrench mic taped proudly to the stand. She grinned at the crowd. "Welcome," she said. "This may not be the biggest garage I've ever played, but it's definitely the cleanest." The laugh came, strong and instant. But this time, she didn't stay in the garage. She moved on. Into new material. Into bigger stories. Into a rhythm that was entirely her own. By the end, the audience was on their feet. Afterward, Ava hugged her so tight she almost spilled water down Hannah's shirt. "You're not just viral," Ava said. "You're real. You're happening." Hannah laughed, dizzy with adrenaline. Maybe she was. That night, back in her room, Hannah lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. Not just imagining the spotlight anymore, but the road beyond it. Theaters, tours, places she hadn't even dreamed of yet. And the thought didn't scare her. It thrilled her. Chapter 8. The Ticketed Life. The email looked fake. Subject line: Booking inquiry. The Willow Theater. Hannah squinted at the screen, half convinced it was one of those scams that promised free cruises in exchange for her social security number. She clicked it anyway, heart thumping. Asterisk. "Hi, Hannah. We've seen your clips circulating online, and we'd love to book you for a Friday showcase at the Willow Theater. The slot is 25 minutes, paid, with full tech support. Please let us know if you're interested. Paid." The word glowed at her. She reread the email 5 times, then burst out of her room so loudly Baxter skittered under the couch like a spooked Roomba. "Mom! Dad!" she shouted, waving her laptop like she'd just hacked into NASA. "They want to pay me. To tell jokes. Like, money. Her dad, who was midway through tightening a bolt on the dishwasher, dropped his wrench. "Money? Not just free muffins? Money." Her mom gasped like she'd just been cast as the lead in a soap opera. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful." The Willow Theater wasn't Carnegie Hall. It was a historic single-screen cinema that doubled as a live event venue, complete with creaky seats, velvet curtains, and the faint smell of butter that had soaked into the walls over 80 years. But to Hannah, it was the Coliseum. The marquee outside read, "Friday. Showcase. Hannah Vale guests." Seeing her name lit up in blocky letters nearly made her knees buckle. "Is this real?" she whispered, clutching Ava's arm. "It's real," Ava said, grinning. "And you're on the poster next to a jazz trio called the Hot Pretzels, so you're basically a legend." Backstage, she felt the difference. There was a green room, with snacks, and bottled water that wasn't lukewarm from sitting in a cooler. The mic wasn't buzzing with static. There was an actual sound technician who asked, "Do you need a stool? A music cue? A spotlight adjustment?" Hannah blinked at him. I usually just hope the spiders don't fall on me mid-set." The tech raised an eyebrow. "Cool. I'll keep an eye out for arachnids then." Her turn came second, after a local improv troupe who wore matching Hawaiian shirts. As the host read her name, she stepped onto the stage, the curtain pulling back to reveal the audience. 200 people, every seat filled. Not just friends, not just neighbors, strangers, paying strangers. Her heart beat like a drumline. She grabbed the mic, glanced at the audience, and smiled. "Well," she said, "this is definitely the biggest garage I've ever played." The laugh roared. And she was in. She started with familiar material: the garage, the minivan, her dad's suspicious hoarding of spare screws that might save humanity one day. But halfway through, she pivoted into new territory. She told a story about accidentally buying decaf coffee and realizing it was basically bean-flavored water cosplay. She described Baxter's habit of barking at the exact moment Zoom meetings reached "Any questions?" She acted out her mom's terrifying whisper yelling in church. Every punchline hit, every pause stretched just right. At one point, she looked out and saw her dad in the crowd, shoulders shaking with laughter, tears in his eyes. She nearly lost her place. She wasn't just making strangers laugh. She was making her family proud. Afterward, the applause carried her off stage like a wave. The host handed her a crisp white envelope, and she opened it to find actual cash inside. She gasped. "This is real money." "Yeah," the host said dryly. "We don't pay in Home Depot coupons." In the lobby, strangers approached her like she was already famous. "You were hilarious. Where can I see you next?" "My girlfriend's been quoting your garage joke all week." A reporter from the local paper scribbled notes while asking, "Why the garage? What does it symbolize?" Hannah shrugged. "It's where the spiders and I first became business partners." The reporter laughed, jotting it down like it was philosophy. Back home, she spread the bills across her bed like a dragon with treasure. "Don't spend it all in one place," Ava teased from the doorway. "Oh, I will," Hannah said. "On snacks for Baxter." The dog barked approvingly. The next morning, the paper arrived. The headline read, "Local comic makes big laughs at the Willow." Below was a picture of Hannah mid-gesture, wrench mic taped proudly to the stand beside her. Her dad clipped it out and stuck it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a screwdriver. "Historical artifact," he said. "This'll be worth millions one day." Within a week, more emails poured in. A brewery wanted her to headline a comedy night. A community college offered to book her for student orientation. A city festival asked if she'd be part of their arts stage. Hannah blinked at her inbox, scrolling and scrolling. "This is happening," she whispered. Her mom squeezed her hand. "Of course it is. You built it. Joke by joke." That Friday, the garage show felt different. Packed as ever, laughter booming, but everyone knew. This wasn't just practice anymore. This was the origin story. Frank raised his beer during the post-show hangout. "Don't forget us little people when you're selling out stadiums," he said. Hannah grinned, wrench mic propped against her chair. "Are you kidding? You're all coming with me. Somebody has to keep the spiders company." The crowd erupted, and Hannah sat back, laughing with them, knowing the garage had grown bigger. Not in square footage, but in reach. Chapter 9. Out of the garage, into the world. Hannah had never packed for a tour before. Not like this, anyway. She stood in her bedroom staring at an open suitcase like it might bite her if she wasn't careful. Socks? Check. Notebook? Check. Extra duct tape for the mic? Check. Emergency chocolate stash? Double check. "This is insane," she muttered, pacing. "I'm leaving the garage, like, physically leaving it, and people are gonna hear me. Not just my friends or family, actual strangers, paying strangers. What if they don't get the hamster joke?" Her mom poked her head into the room. "Sweetheart, they will. You've been doing this for years. Just bring yourself and the wrench." Hannah clutched the duct-taped mic stand like it was a talisman. I know, but bigger stage, bigger audience, bigger everything." Her mom smiled. Exactly. You're ready. The first stop was a comedy club 2 hours outside the city. A real venue. Velvet curtains, neon sign outside, actual stage lights. Not the cafe, not the garage. This was professional. Hannah's car was loaded with her gear. Mic, stand, notebook, a backpack stuffed with granola bars, and Baxter. Well, not Baxter. Her mom insisted he stay home. Dogs don't travel well, she said, wagging a finger. Especially dramatic ones like yours. Hannah tried not to cry. She would miss him. The drive was chaotic. GPS recalculated at least 3 times. Her playlist failed halfway through, and she got lost twice despite Google Maps holding her hand virtually the entire time. She finally arrived 15 minutes before her slot, sweaty and slightly panicked. Backstage, she peeked at the audience through a curtain. Seats. Dozens of them. More than she'd faced anywhere. People were already settling in, chatting, nursing drinks that probably cost more than her weekly grocery bill. Her stomach twisted. The host leaned over. "You're on in 5. You good?" Hannah nodded, clutching her wrench mic. "Yep, totally. Just breathe." She stepped out. Spotlights hit her like a heat wave. The crowd was murky in the glow, faces blending together, yet she could feel their energy, curious, expectant, patient. She opened with the familiar line, "Well, this is the biggest garage I've ever played." A laugh. A single, perfect laugh. And she was off. She tried something new mid-set, a story about her first failed attempt at online dating. A story that could have been cringy in the wrong hands, but she delivered it with precision. Pauses, gestures, timing perfected in front of her garage spiders and cafe friends. By the end, the audience was roaring. And the applause? Actual applause. Not polite, not mild. Real, sustained, grateful. She realized halfway through her bow that she was doing it. She was standing in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by strangers, and they got it. They laughed. They leaned in. They trusted her. Afterward, people came up to her like she was some kind of local celebrity. "You're hilarious," one woman said. "I've never heard jokes like that," another added. "Garage girl," someone shouted from across the room. Hannah laughed. She was garage girl all right, but she was more. She was the comedian who made strangers feel like they'd just walked into a living room and were part of the story. Backstage, she noticed something odd. A notebook left on a table, filled with scrawled observations. Notepad from another comic? Maybe? She didn't have time to ask. The host shook her hand. "You killed it. Want a regular slot next month?" Hannah blinked. "Yes, absolutely. Yes." The next city was bigger. A college theater with actual rows, numbered seats, and a light board that looked like it could launch a spaceship. Traveling for gigs was exhausting in a way she hadn't anticipated. The hotel smelled like mildew. The pillows were flat. The continental breakfast consisted entirely of stale bagels and instant coffee. But the energy backstage was electric. Everyone buzzing, everyone nervous, everyone hoping. Hannah fit right in. Her set that night was more daring. She riffed on city life, subway rats, coffee snobbery, the inexplicable necessity of yoga pants everywhere. She tested long pauses, experimental pacing, exaggerated expressions. She glanced at the audience. They laughed exactly where she hoped. She even tried a physical gag, miming a subway car jerk that sent a pretend latte flying. Perfect timing, perfect laugh. She exhaled mid-story, realizing she had done more than survive outside her garage. She had thrived. Between shows, she kept a journal, not just notes on jokes, but reflections on the experience. Stage is bigger, laughs are louder, heartbeats faster. Still me, still garage girl, still funny. She scribbled every detail, every facial expression that made her audience chuckle. Every pause that earned a gasp. Every gesture that worked better than she thought it would. She was collecting data, like always. But now, it was for the world. Somewhere between two cities, she started noticing signs. Strangers quoting her jokes, a fan tagging her in a meme, another post of the wrench mic taped to a random lamppost, captioned, "Garage Girls Spotted in the Wild." Hannah laughed alone in the rental car. She'd never felt so seen. By the third city, she was performing to nearly 300 people. A local radio station mentioned her in a weekend roundup. Garage girl, rising star with a wrench mic and a heart of gold. Her mom called at 11 p.m. just to hear her laugh. "You're famous," she said. "Mom," Hannah replied, exhausted but buzzing. "I'm barely. But it's happening. The garage is growing legs, and it's walking." Every night was a mix of exhilaration and sheer fatigue. Driving, setting up, performing, packing, driving again. She learned hotel hacks. Always request extra towels, never trust continental coffee, and duct tape a wrench to a mic before you leave. She also learned that audiences outside your comfort zone weren't terrifying. They were alive. They were unpredictable. And they taught her new ways to shape a joke, to read a room, to play. On the final night of the tour, she stepped on stage in a city she'd never been to before, mic in hand, and said, "Welcome to the biggest garage I've ever played in a different state." The crowd laughed instantly, and she felt it. The rhythm, the energy, the shared delight. This time, the spiders were imaginary. The garage was gone. And yet, she felt at home. Because she was bringing herself, her voice, her timing. She didn't need the garage to define her. She was already more. And the world was listening. Back at the hotel that night, she texted her mom. "The garage is proud." Her mom replied almost immediately. "Always." Hannah lay back on the bed, exhausted and elated, thinking about the path ahead, touring, bigger stages, bigger laughs, bigger challenges. And she was ready. Chapter 10. Wrenches and Wild Cards. The airport was chaos. Not the normal chaos of flight delays or spilled coffee. No, this was full-blown. Why is this happening to me now? Chaos. Hannah clutched her wrench mic in one hand and a suitcase in the other as she navigated through a sea of travelers, security lines stretching endlessly like some Kafka-esque nightmare. Her flight had been delayed by 3 hours, and she hadn't eaten since breakfast. Baxter, bless him, was still home safe, unaware that his human was navigating the real world. "Relax," she muttered to herself. "You've performed in garages, cafes, and theaters in other states. A little airport turbulence isn't going to stop you." Then the PA announced, "Flight 427 to Minneapolis has been canceled due to mechanical issues. We apologize for the inconvenience." Hannah groaned. Her tour manager, a wiry woman named Lila with a perpetual ponytail and sunglasses indoors, shook her head. "Okay, change of plans. You'll be driving 5 hours." "No, I'm not kidding. Yes, you can bring the wrench mic." Hannah stared. "Drive 5 hours?" Lila held up a hand. "It's part of the adventure. You'll tell jokes along the way. Think of it as car comedy." Hannah considered the van she'd rented, tiny and cramped, with a dash that seemed older than she was. "I can do car comedy," she muttered. She buckled in. The road was long. The GPS recalculated at least 4 times, once trying to send them across a closed bridge. Hannah sat in the passenger seat, dictating new joke ideas into her phone, occasionally laughing out loud when she realized she could weave airport delays, traffic, and rental cars into a single bit. By the time they arrived in Minneapolis, she was tired, exhilarated, and slightly delirious. The venue was a small theater with a capacity of about 400. Not huge, but respectable. Backstage, she started setting up her mic, only to realize the sound tech had hooked it up incorrectly. The mic shrieked like a banshee every time she tested it. Hannah froze, gripping her wrench. Do we unplug it? Replug it? Summon a tech exorcist? Lila rolled her eyes. You just have to survive until showtime. That's your superpower. She wasn't wrong. The audience filtered in, oblivious to the technical chaos. The theater was packed. Families, college students, local comedians, and a few press types who seemed to be taking notes like she was the next Einstein of laughter. Hannah took the stage, heart thudding, and announced, "Well, this is the biggest garage I've ever played, with a side of technical difficulties." The crowd laughed immediately. Relief. She started strong, her usual repertoire about garages, minivans, and Baxter's impeccable timing. The first 15 minutes went smoothly. Then, disaster struck. A heckler. Not a subtle interruption, a full-on loud, "This is dumb!" shouted from the balcony. Hannah paused. The audience gasped. Her heart skipped. Then she smiled. "Well," she said, "finally, someone here is honest. Thank you for saving me the trouble of being self-critical for the next 5 minutes." The crowd laughed. The heckler grumbled. Hannah pressed on, weaving the heckler into the show. "You know, I love criticism, especially the loud public kind. It really keeps me humble, or at least awake." Every joke landed, every pause timed, every physical gesture exaggerated just enough to highlight the absurdity. By the end, the heckler was laughing too. Backstage, Lila shook her head. "You're impossible." "I'm just adaptable," Hannah said, smirking. "You're terrifying when you handle chaos like it's normal." Hannah laughed, hugging her wrench. "Welcome to the science of timing. It's not just comedy, it's survival." But the technical challenges weren't done. During the second act, a stage light flickered and went out mid-joke. For a moment, Hannah was in partial darkness, the spotlight catching only the top of her head. She froze. The audience murmured. Then she improvised. "Well, I guess the garage is partially powered by mystery screws, and some of them aren't working tonight." Laughter. Big, rolling laughter. She stepped into the shadowed light, gesturing as if the light itself were part of the act. You know, nothing says suspense like watching a comedian wrestle with invisible forces of electricity. By the end, the audience gave her a standing ovation. After the show, people crowded around for photos, autographs, and advice on how to tape a wrench to a mic stand. One young comedian approached her, wide-eyed. "How did you handled the heckler, the mic, the blackout, flawlessly." Hannah shrugged. "Years of practice, and a lot of spiders." The kid laughed, scribbling in a notebook. "Spiders?" "Yes," Hannah said. "You'll understand one day." The next morning, she and Lila drove to the next city, coffee in hand, playlist humming. Hannah reflected on the tour so far. The hotels, the long drives, the viral videos, the packed theaters, the hecklers, the flickering lights. Each challenge was a lesson, a joke, a story. "This is what I signed up for," she said aloud, though the GPS mispronounced the next town. Not just laughs, but chaos. Real, unpredictable chaos. And I can handle it. Her first week of touring outside the city ended with a small venue in a college town. She performed to an audience of students who had never seen her before. One kid shouted, "Garage Girl rules," halfway through a punchline about online dating disasters. Hannah froze for half a second, then laughed louder than the crowd. "Thank you, I've been told my garage is quite expansive." The audience howled. She realized then that she could take her act anywhere, because she didn't just rely on familiar surroundings. She carried her timing, her voice, and her confidence with her. That night, back in her hotel room, she sat cross-legged on the bed, wrench mic beside her. She reviewed the week. Airports, delays, hecklers, technical meltdowns, sold-out shows. She laughed aloud, and typed a single note into her phone. Chaos, conquered. Laughs, achieved. Garage, still proud. Chapter 11. Headlines and Hot Mics. Hannah had never imagined seeing her own face on a website like Funny Times Online. Yet there it was. Bold, smiling, wrench mic in hand, under the headline, Garage Girl, How Hannah Vale Turned Spiders and Duct Tape into Internet Gold. She blinked, then blinked again. What? What is happening? She whispered. Ava, sprawled on the bed beside her with a tablet, snorted. You're trending again. Like, not just in garages and theaters, real, actual media. People who wear suits and ask questions instead of just laughing at you. Hannah stared at the article. They called me, what? A rising comedy star with an uncanny knack for timing, storytelling, and incorporating her humble garage origins into a universally relatable persona. Uncanny knack for timing, she repeated. Do they know I'm literally counting syllables? They know, Ava said, grinning. The internet knows everything. Her phone buzzed incessantly for the next 48 hours. Interviews, podcast invites, requests for live appearances, and one particularly persistent radio DJ who seemed to want to talk about her toothbrush habits. Hannah leaned back in her chair, staring at the wall. I just do jokes. That's all I do. Her mom popped her head in. Sweetheart, maybe it's time to schedule a few interviews, but remember, keep it you. That's what they love. Hannah smiled, tugging her hoodie closer. Being me is harder than it looks under a bright light. The first interview was for a morning radio show. She was nervous, mostly because she had no idea what to wear. How do you dress for radio when your audience is thousands of strangers, half of whom will be judging your shoes? Her mom suggested jeans and a hoodie. Comfortable and authentic, she said. Plus, it goes with the wrench. Hannah nodded. Perfect. She grabbed her duct-taped mic stand for a photo opportunity. Technically unnecessary, but she insisted. You can't meet the press without the wrench of destiny, she told Ava, who rolled her eyes but secretly took a picture. The radio interview was surreal. So, Hannah, the host said, tell us about the garage. How did this whole thing start? Hannah laughed. Well, I was 10. I had a toy microphone, technically a wrench, duct-taped to a stick. I'd perform for paint cans and spiders. And somehow, those spiders gave me more applause than anyone else at the time. The host chuckled. And that led to this? Yes, she said, gesturing to the mic. The world's most unconventional comedy career and also the most supportive audience, spiders included. Listeners laughed, tweeted, and started sharing clips of her old garage videos. She was officially an internet sensation and a media darling. Next came a video interview for a local TV segment. They set her up with lights, cameras, and a coffee cup she had to pretend to sip. Don't spill it, the producer warned. Hannah nodded. Right, safety first, comedy second, always duct tape third. The segment went well. She told her story. Garage beginnings, viral fame, touring outside the city, handling hecklers, technical mishaps, and the gradual realization that people really liked her. Do you ever get nervous performing for strangers? The host asked. Every time, she admitted. But it's like, when I stand there, I'm not afraid of them. I'm excited to share the joke, and maybe make a few people feel like they're in the garage with me, even if the garage is imaginary right now. The segment ended with applause from the crew and an email from her mom that simply said, "Proud of you, always." A week later, her manager Lila announced the next phase, a majorly ticketed theater performance in the city where Hannah had first gone viral. You'll headline a 600-seat theater, Lila said, sliding a contract across the table. It's a step up. The audience is bigger, expectations are higher. You ready? Hannah blinked at the number. 600 seats. She glanced at her duct-taped mic, resting like a crown on the table. I think so, I'll be honest, it's terrifying. Lila grinned. Good. Terrified is healthy. Just make them laugh. Preparation was methodical. Hannah worked tirelessly, reviewing past footage, tweaking jokes, timing pauses, writing new material. She practiced in front of her family and friends, occasionally stopping to adjust pacing. Her dad handed her a printed diagram of garage to stage flow. I drew it myself, he said proudly. It's a map of your comedic journey. Her brother smirked. You're obsessed. Obsessed prepared, Hannah said. Her mom handed her snacks labeled punchline popcorn, timing treats, and microwave muffins. For sustenance, she said, both emotional and nutritional. On the night of the show, the theater was packed. Every seat accounted for, every ticket scanned. Hannah stepped onto the stage, wrench mic in hand, feeling the spotlight like a living pulse. Well, she said, this is the biggest garage I've ever played, with actual humans and not a single spider in sight. The laugh was immediate, rolling and warm. She moved into her set, flawlessly transitioning between old favorites and new material. She tested timing in ways she hadn't dared before, extended pauses, subtle gestures, dramatic facial expressions. Every laugh was louder, every connection deeper. Midway through, she glanced at the back row. She spotted someone holding a phone, filming, but it wasn't intrusive. The audience was engaged. People were hanging on every word. Hannah realized she had arrived. Not just in the sense of fame or tickets sold, but in confidence. She could perform anywhere, anytime, and still be herself. The wrench mic stood proudly beside her. It wasn't a gimmick. It was a symbol of her journey. Small beginnings, measured growth, and endless persistence. The standing ovation at the end of the set left her breathless. Tears pricked her eyes. She had done it. She had commanded the stage, owned her timing, and made strangers laugh until their sides hurt. Backstage, Lila hugged her. That was incredible. You're ready for bigger things. National tours, specials, maybe even your own show. Hannah laughed, hugging her wrench mic like a childhood friend. One thing at a time. First, the garage, then the world. The press frenzy that followed was both exhilarating and surreal. Photos, interviews, tweets, and hashtags flooded in. Headlines praised her originality, timing, and charm. People shared clips of the performance like digital confetti. Hannah scrolled through her notifications and smiled. Not because of the fame, but because of the impact. People were laughing. People were watching. People were connecting to her story. That night, she called her mom. I did it, she said. I know, her mom replied softly. I've always known. Hannah smiled, exhausted and elated. It's bigger than I imagined. But I think I can handle it. Her mom laughed. Of course you can. You've been handling garages, spiders, and duct tape since you were 10. This is just bigger. Hannah hung up, looking at her wrench mic. The journey was far from over. More stages, bigger audiences, unexpected challenges, but she had the skills, the timing, and the heart to take them all on. And the garage? It was still there, the foundation of everything. She felt ready for whatever came next. Chapter 12, Standing Room Only. The theater smelled like history. Velvet curtains, polished wood floors, the faint echo of decades of footsteps. Hannah stood backstage, clutching her duct-taped wrench mic like a lifeline. The seat chart in front of her made her stomach flip. 850 seats, every one of them accounted for. This is insane, she whispered to Lila, who leaned against a wall sipping a coffee that was already lukewarm. Lila smiled. Insane is your middle name now. You've done bigger rooms in spirit. You just haven't seen them in the flesh. Hannah shook her head. Bigger than the garage, bigger than my living room, bigger than the poorhouse. 850 seats. People I don't know. People who didn't watch the viral clip. People who didn't know me before tonight. That's the point, Lila said. They're going to meet you now, and you're ready. The pre-show ritual was sacred. Hannah walked through her set in the dressing room, pacing between mirrors, muttering punchlines under her breath. Baxter wasn't there. He never left home. But she imagined him sitting on the rug, wagging his tail in approval. Her mom had sent a text earlier. "I've parked my heart in every seat. Laugh loud for me." Hannah smiled. She'd never admit it out loud, but the thought grounded her. The stage manager peeked in. "Places in 5. Hannah took a deep breath, straightened her hoodie, and gripped the mic stand. Her fingers brushed the duct tape. Comfort, history, identity. When she walked on stage, the theater erupted. Not just applause, but anticipation, energy vibrating through the room like electricity. "Well," she said, looking out into the sea of faces, "this is the biggest garage I've ever played, and I didn't even have to clean it first." The laugh was instantaneous, rolling, real. She started with her classic material, the minivan that could only go neutral, broken, or screaming, her dad's obsessive spare screw collection, Baxter's uncanny ability to bark exactly at Zoom meetings. But she didn't linger. She transitioned smoothly into new material, crafted specifically for this night. Her experience navigating airports and rental cars on tour. The absurdities of online dating, from accidental decaf coffee orders to overly literal text messages. Subtle observational humor about city life. Scooters that seem to chase you. Latte art that looks like hieroglyphics. The inexplicable popularity of socks with sandals. Every joke landed, every pause earned gasps or chuckles. Every gesture drew the audience in. Mid-set, she addressed something she hadn't anticipated, the enormity of the room. "You know," she said, "when you're in a garage, every laugh is an echo of its own. You hear it bounce off the walls, off the cans, off the spiders, who are very judgmental. Here." She gestured at the packed house. "Here, your laugh has to travel further. So if you laugh loudly, it'll reach the person in row 27. If you laugh quietly, it's basically a suggestion." The audience laughed. More importantly, they listened. Hannah realized she didn't need to scream or overcompensate. Her timing, her cadence, her presence carried the energy of the room. There was a technical hiccup halfway through. A spotlight flickered, casting her in partial shadow. The microphone buzzed intermittently. Hannah smiled. "Ah, the universe reminds me. It doesn't need perfect light or perfect sound to enjoy the chaos. I'm just a conduit for jokes." The audience laughed harder. She moved into the shadows, accentuating gestures, leaning into the imperfection. The room responded like a living organism, laughter ebbing and flowing in real time. She realized something profound. Imperfections didn't ruin the performance. They enhanced it. A minor panic came when a heckler shouted from the back row, "I've seen better." Hannah froze briefly, then grinned. "Well," she said, "you're clearly a connoisseur of garages. Maybe next time I'll bring a screwdriver and a blueprint for your taste." The crowd roared. The heckler laughed reluctantly. By the end, even he was clapping loudly, a little sheepishly, like he'd been converted. The final segment of her set was personal. She shared stories of her family, her friends, Baxter, and even the spiders that had been her first audience. She brought them into the theater, not literally, of course, but in spirit. People laughed, yes, but they also smiled, leaned forward, connected. She could feel it. She could see it. The audience wasn't just watching a performer, they were witnessing a journey. When she left the stage, the standing ovation hit her like a wave. She blinked, nearly cried, and gripped her wrench mic like a trophy. Backstage, Lila shook her head in disbelief. "You're ridiculous. I've never seen anything like that." Hannah laughed, panting, exhausted, elated. "It's overwhelming, but also perfect." "You've sold out a theater," Lila said. "Do you feel famous yet?" Hannah shook her head. "No, not famous. Just fulfilled. Connected. Like all those garages I performed in finally led here. And the spiders? They'd be proud." The post-show crowd was electric. Fans lined up for autographs, selfies, and advice. One person held a phone recording her mid-laugh. Another waved a sign that said, "Garage Girl Forever." Hannah laughed, signing, posing, chatting. Each interaction reminded her why she started. Sharing laughs, creating moments, building connections, even if some of those connections began with spiders and paint cans. The media coverage was immediate. Photos, tweets, local news segments praising her originality and warmth. Clips from the show went viral within hours. Headlines read, "Garage Girl fills 850 seats. Hannah Vale's rise to comedy stardom. From paint cans to packed theaters, the story of Hannah Vale." Hannah stared at the headlines, phone buzzing endlessly. She could feel her life changing, but it didn't feel overwhelming. It felt right. That night, back in her hotel room, she sank onto the bed, wrench mic propped beside her like a loyal friend. She texted her mom, "Garage proud, theater conquered, heart full." Her mom replied instantly, "I've always known." Hannah smiled, scrolling through fan messages, tweets, and photos. The garage was far away now. The theaters, the lights, the audience. It was bigger, louder, and stranger than she ever imagined. And yet, she felt the same spark, the same joy, the same humor that began with a toy microphone and an audience of spiders. The foundation of her career, her heart, and her comedy hadn't changed. It had just grown. And Hannah Vale was ready for whatever came next. Chapter 13. The Garage Goes National. Hannah stared out the window of the tour bus, the city lights streaking past like neon paint on black velvet. It had been weeks since she first stepped onto the stage outside her home city. Weeks filled with hotels, airports, rental cars, hecklers, buzzing microphones, and the exhilarating chaos of live audiences. Weeks in which the garage, her first stage, her first love, felt simultaneously far away and impossibly close. "This is wild," she muttered, clutching the duct-taped wrench mic like it had hands of its own. Ava, sprawled across the seat behind her with earbuds in, smirked. "Wild is good. Wild is exactly what you do best." Hannah smiled. She had learned that along the way. Wild was where the magic happened. The final stop on the tour was the largest venue yet. A 200-seat theater in the heart of the city where her viral clip had first taken off. This was no longer just a tour. This was the culmination of years of careful joke building, meticulous timing, and relentless love for the craft. Backstage, the crew buzzed with activity. Spotlights tested, sound levels checked, chairs adjusted. Everything that could go wrong probably would, but Hannah felt ready. "Well," she said, tightening the tape on her mic, "let's see if the garage can go national." Her set opened with a familiar line. "This is the biggest garage I've ever played, and the rent is surprisingly reasonable considering the stage lighting." The laugh was immediate. The audience roared. Hannah dove into her set, weaving her classic material with fresh stories from the tour. Airport chaos, rental car disasters, heckler triumphs, and late-night hotel snack adventures. Every punchline hit. Every pause landed. Every gesture was perfect. Halfway through, she addressed the enormity of the room. "You know," she said, gesturing at the packed theater, "when I started, my audience consisted of 3 things: a row of paint cans, a spider, and the occasional confused beetle. Now," she paused dramatically, scanning the faces, Now I'm looking at 1,200 people who chose to be here tonight. That's a lot of Beatles. The audience erupted in laughter. Hannah realized something in that moment. She wasn't just performing, she was connecting. She had turned small beginnings into something tangible, something big, something real. Technical chaos struck briefly. A mic buzzed. A spotlight flickered. But Hannah adapted instinctively. Ah, the spirits of Garage Past are reminding us. Nothing is perfect, she said. But perfect isn't funny. Chaos is funny. The audience laughed harder than before. Even the tech crew chuckled, exchanging impressed glances. Then came a moment she hadn't planned for. A spontaneous, wave-like cheer from the audience. People were clapping, stomping, and whistling in a way that sent chills down her spine. Hannah paused, taking it in. Every seat filled. Every person present because they wanted to witness her. And she thought about the garage. The tiny, cluttered space with paint cans, spider allies, and a duct-taped wrench mic. She remembered her 10-year-old self, standing in the glow of a single overhead bulb, imagining audiences that big, dreaming impossibly. And now she was here. The final segment of her set was personal. She shared stories of her family, her friends, and Baxter. She recounted moments no one else knew, the secret midnight writing sessions, the careful timing adjustments, the countless recordings of her own voice to dissect each laugh. And she included the spiders. You know, she said, there were 3 things that believed in me first. Paint cans, spiders, and, well, me. And if you think about it, all 3 are excellent audience members. They never complain. They never leave early. And they provide perfect feedback. Especially spiders. The tiny ones are brutal critics. The crowd roared. Some were laughing, some were clapping, some were wiping tears from their eyes. Hannah realized then that this was more than comedy. This was connection. Laughter had become a bridge between her beginnings and her present, between her garage and the national stage, between her and the people who trusted her with their attention, their time, and their joy. When the curtain finally fell, the standing ovation shook the theater. People cheered, whistled, clapped, and called her name. She grinned, almost dizzy from the energy. Backstage, Lila shook her head. You're impossible. I'm just lucky, Hannah said, hugging her wrench mic. And persistent. Lila laughed. Persistent, yes. Lucky? Maybe. But mostly talented, fearless, and completely yourself. That's why they love you. Fans lined up for autographs and photos. Some had seen her online. Others had traveled hours to be in the theater. One young girl held a sign that said, Garage Girl Dreams Big. Hannah knelt, smiling, autographing the sign. Dream big, she said. And remember, garage or no garage, it's the spark inside you that matters most. The girl's eyes lit up, and Hannah felt something shift. This was no longer just her journey. It was inspiration, contagious and unstoppable. Later that night, she collapsed into her hotel bed, exhausted, but exhilarated. Her phone buzzed with messages, tweets, and news coverage. Her mom sent a text. Garage proud, heartful, eyes teary. You did it. Hannah smiled, clutching her wrench mic like a childhood friend. We did it, she whispered. All of us. She scrolled through social media, reading messages from fans who were laughing, crying, and sharing their own stories. People from across the country who felt seen, connected, and inspired by her journey from garage to stage. As she drifted off to sleep, Hannah thought about the road ahead. National tours, television appearances, comedy specials. She thought about bigger stages, bigger audiences, and the unpredictability of the career she had built with grit, humor, and a lot of duct tape. But she also thought about the garage. The tiny, cluttered room where it all began. The smell of sawdust, the row of paint cans, the supportive spiders, and the first mic, toy or otherwise. That garage was her origin story, her grounding, and her reminder that no matter how big the world got, she could always return to the heart of who she was. Hannah closed her eyes and smiled. The wrench mic was beside her, a silent witness to the journey. She didn't need it to perform anymore. She had everything she needed already: timing, confidence, humor, heart, and a little chaos, just enough to keep things interesting. Because the garage had taught her one fundamental truth. It wasn't the size of the audience, the venue, or the lights that mattered. It was the courage to show up, to tell the truth, and to make people laugh. And in that, Hannah Vale had already won. The garage had grown, the audience had grown, and so had she. The future was wide open: national tours, comedy specials, collaborations, and maybe even a late-night TV debut. But for now, she let herself savor the moment, the lights, the applause, the joy. And somewhere in a corner of her mind, she heard a tiny, imagined cheer from a row of spiders. They were proud. And so was she.
Thanks for listening. Stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next story.